Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast. I'm Simon Marks from Washington, D.C., and these are the top headlines of this Tuesday.
We're in Europe, and that's true. This is called the Freedom Square. Can you imagine this morning, 2 cruise missiles hit this Freedom Square, dozens of killed ones. This is the price of freedom.
As Russia's invasion of Ukraine enters day 6, President Zelensky addresses the European Parliament by video link. He says no force can destroy his country, and he pleads with Europe for more support. The European Parliament holds an emergency debate to discuss the bloc's response to Russia's aggression. EU President Roberta Metsola slams Moscow, saying aggressors and warmongers have no place in a democracy. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov faces a diplomatic boycott at the UN Human Rights Council as several diplomats walk out during his address to the body. Ukraine's foreign ministry tweets a video showing an administrative building in the central square of the northeastern city of Kyiv blown up by a Russian missile strike. Ukrainian officials say at least 10 people were killed and 35 injured in the rocket assault. Satellite images show Russian ground forces moving closer to Ukraine's capital with a military convoy stretching back over 40 miles. And an Indian student is killed in the shelling in Kyiv as the government in Delhi advises all Indian nationals, including students, to leave the Ukrainian capital immediately. A massive column of Russian military forces is steadily closing in on Kyiv. The latest satellite images show a 40-mile-long convoy of armoured vehicles, tanks, artillery and other logistical vehicles moving towards the Ukrainian capital. The front of the column has already reached the outskirts of the city. The images also show evidence of recent fighting. You can see damaged bridges and destroyed armoured vehicles on the western edge of Kyiv. The company providing the images, Maxar Technologies, says its satellites witnessed plumes of smoke rising from a number of homes and buildings near the roads along which the convoy has been travelling. There's also an additional deployment of ground forces and ground attack helicopter units in southern Belarus, less than 20 miles north of the Ukrainian border. Areas around Kyiv have already been heavily charred and destroyed. Another set of images, these provided by Black Sky, show the extensive damage caused by recent airstrikes on the Antonov airport in Hostomel. It lies north of Kyiv. It has been the scene of intense fighting between Russian and Ukrainian forces. These pictures show craters at a military airbase in Vasilkiv, southwest of the capital Kyiv, and the aftermath of a fire at an oil terminal that was hit by Russian missiles. And these images are from Kharkiv. A warehouse can be seen on fire, and burnt fields in the city of Chernihiv in northeastern Ukraine. It's seen heavy fighting with the country's second largest city, Kharkiv. According to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, both cities remain under Kyiv's control. Kyiv is no stranger to military action. In 1941, it was the scene of fierce battles between Soviet forces and the Nazis. But now, Russia is shelling Ukraine's second-largest city as the Russians press on with their invasion. Missiles struck the very heart of the city, Freedom Square, just outside the regional administration offices. Video footage showed a missile hitting the local government building and then exploding, causing a massive fireball. At least 10 people were killed and 35 wounded. The city's opera house, its concert hall and government offices were all hit. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky now accusing Russia of war crimes specifically for its assault on the city. And Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba has called for more international sanctions against Russia after what he said was a barbaric attack.
Ukrainian officials said civilians were killed on Monday as Russian artillery bombarded residential districts of Kharkiv, Ukraine's second-largest city, while Moscow's invading forces continued to meet with stiff resistance from Ukrainians on the fifth day of conflict. The attacks came as Russian and Ukrainian officials met on the Belarusian border but made no breakthrough. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky described mounting civilian casualties as he requested immediate membership into the European Union.
Just think about it. Since the beginning of the Russian invasion, within only 4 days, due to the Russian shelling, 16 Ukrainian children have died. 45 children were wounded. Each crime, each shelling from the occupants against us makes us and our partners more and more united.
The Russian invasion, the biggest assault on a European state since World War II, has failed to make the decisive early gains that Russian President Vladimir Putin would have hoped for. But Kharkiv in Ukraine's northeast has become a major battleground. Officials said Russian artillery pounded residential districts, even though no Ukrainian army positions or strategic infrastructure were there. At the United Nations, Moscow's ambassador denied the reports.
The Russian army does not pose a threat to the civilians of Ukraine. It's not shelling civilian areas.
In Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, explosions were heard before dawn. Both men and women showed up on Monday at civil territorial defense centers to enroll and receive weapons.
I am here because those whom we were not glad to see knocked on my door. And I believe everyone who can resist must do so, because it is our home and we must defend it.
Despite the extraordinary resistance of the Ukrainian people, Putin on Monday showed no sign of ending the invasion he unleashed, dismissing the West as an empire of lies. U.S. officials expect Russian forces to try to encircle Kyiv in the coming days, warning they could become more aggressive out of frustration with their slow advance on the Ukrainian capital. Satellite images showed a Russian military convoy stretching over 40 miles Monday and moving closer to Kyiv.
The president of Ukraine has become a modern-day war hero in Europe. A Ukrainian citizen who used to entertain the nation has now become its voice of resistance and its biggest strength. Amid continuous air raids, missile attacks and gun battles in the country, President Volodymyr Zelensky appeared today before the European Parliament by video link. He was welcomed with roaring applause and a standing ovation from every member of the legislature. The leader of war-torn Ukraine emerged from his office in Kyiv, red-eyed and unshaven. Zelensky looked exhausted but alive, holding his nerve and his country together in the darkest hour of its 30-year history as a modern independent state. Zelensky spoke of heavy Russian shelling that has killed at least 16 Ukrainian children.
I believe that we today we're giving lives for values, for rights, for freedom, for the desire to be equal as much as you are. We are giving away our best people, the strongest ones, the most value-based ones. Ukrainians are incredible. And very often we love to say that we will win over everyone. It's going to be much stronger with us, so that's for sure. Without you, Ukraine is going to be lonely, lonesome. We have proven our strength. We have proven that, as at a minimum, we are exactly the same as you are. So do prove that you are with us. Do prove that you will not let us go. Do prove that you indeed are Europeans. And then life will win over death, and light will win over darkness. Glory be to Ukraine.
He ended his speech with a message of life and unity, with a powerful hand gesture, which was once again applauded, rewarded by a standing ovation at the European Parliament. The first round of peace talks aimed at stopping the ongoing fighting between Ukraine and Russia concluded without any major breakthrough, but the delegation suggested that hopes remain. The talks took place at the Belarus-Ukraine border on Monday as Russian troops continued their attack on Ukrainian cities. The Russian delegation said the two countries found certain points on which common positions could be foreseen, and the next round of negotiations is due to be held on the Polish-Belarusian border. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, meanwhile, slammed Moscow over its attack on Kyiv that began even while the negotiations were still underway. He called for an immediate ceasefire and the withdrawal of Russian troops as the country's delegation arrived for talks with Russia. According to reports, Zelensky's office demanded the withdrawal of all Russian troops, including those in the Crimean Peninsula and Donbass.
Какая жесть.
Ці переговори відбувалися на фоні бомбардування та обстрілів нашої території, обстрілів наших міст. Було видно синхронізацію обстрілів з переговорним процесом. Я вважаю, що таким нехитрим способом Росія намагається тиснути. Не втрачайте час.
Ukraine's Western allies are ramping up diplomatic efforts. The French President Emmanuel Macron once again spoke to both the Russian and Ukrainian presidents. During his 90-minute call on Monday with Vladimir Putin, the Russian leader laid out conditions for ending the war. He said that a quick settlement is only possible if Russia's legitimate security interests are unconditionally taken into account, including recognition of Russian sovereignty over the Crimean Peninsula, the denazification of the Ukrainian state, and ensuring Ukraine's neutral status, in other words, halting its moves towards the Western family of nations. Macron, meanwhile, reiterated the demands of the international community for the Russian offensive against Ukraine to stop and reaffirmed the need to implement an immediate ceasefire. He called on Putin to respect international humanitarian law and allow aid shipments to reach the Ukrainian population. The current conflict in Ukraine has its roots in the past. Ukraine has been contested as a proxy battleground between Moscow and the West ever since independence in 1991. Now, the International Criminal Court will probe the situation in Ukraine, going all the way back to 2014, the year that Vladimir Putin annexed Crimea. The decision from the ICC comes in light of Russia's invasion. Neither Ukraine nor Russia are parties to the Rome Statute of the ICC, which is an international treaty focused on 4 crimes: genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes and crimes of aggression. The probe is yet to be approved, but the prosecutor said that despite Russia and Ukraine's absence, there were sufficient grounds to open the case, as Ukraine had earlier accepted the ICC's jurisdiction back in 2014. Also, in addition, Ukraine gave indefinite jurisdiction to the ICC 1 year later to investigate any crimes that occurred in the eastern part of the country. Ukraine is also taking Russia to the International Court of Justice after Russia launched the invasion with claims of genocide and the need to demilitarize Ukraine. Evidence has been mounting against Russia, with Russian missiles said to have been used against civilians in Ukrainian cities, claims that Russia denies despite mounting evidence from Ground Zero. The United Nations says that more than 500,000 civilians have already fled Ukraine, and the European Union estimates that around 4 million people may try to leave the country because of the Russian invasion, further propelling a humanitarian crisis.
As Russia continues to pound Ukraine, over 500,000 Ukrainians have fled their embattled country, many crossing into Poland, Slovakia, Hungary and Romania. And footage of the humanitarian crisis led one German to act.
We have watched what's happening. We have seen the pictures on TV, my daughter and me. And we said, this is so horrible, we want to make a small contribution, however small it may be.
Karsten, who did not give his last name, and his daughter drove more than 600 miles from their home in Frankfurt to the city of Przemysl in southeastern Poland, with the goal of finding a few people who need a ride and a place to stay.
We have donated food and supplies, and we'd like to take somebody to the region of Frankfurt. We are also able to provide accommodation for up to 6 people on short notice.
With men of fighting age prevented from leaving Ukraine, most of those arriving at border towns are women and children. Wait times to cross borders ranged from a few hours at small crossings to several days at busier ones, where lines on the Ukraine side stretched back dozens of miles. EU officials have said the war could displace 7 million people. Among them, Bulia Mohammed, a Ukrainian mother fleeing with her children.
It's our country where we lived. It's a pity to leave your homeland. Home is always home. You always want to be at home. I have never thought that our children would be somewhere else.
She found Karsten, who will take her to Germany.
Well, that was quick. We've been here maybe half an hour, and now the car is full.
Car seats and suitcases loaded, they're ready for another long drive. Thousands more are left at the border, hoping too for the generosity of strangers.
Airlines are bracing for potentially lengthy blockades of key east-west flight corridors after the European Union and Moscow issued tit-for-tat airspace bans. The White House said on Monday, while barring Russian flights in the skies over America is not off the table, it has yet to make a decision. A move by the Biden administration to ban Russia's carriers is expected to provoke a response from Moscow, which could in turn affect carriers including United Airlines. The Chicago-based carrier, for example, uses Russian airspace for flights to the United States from Delhi.
The closure of EU airspace to Russian airliners knocked airline stocks Monday. Shares in European airlines and airport operators were down between 3% and 6% in early trade. Without access to Russia's airspace, carriers will have to divert flights south while also avoiding areas of tension in the Middle East. For Finland's national carrier Finnair, that could mean a loss of business as it uses a route across Russian skies from Europe to Asia via its hub in Helsinki. As a result, the firm saw its shares tumble more than 20%. In Asia, Singapore Airlines said on Monday it was suspending all services between Singapore and Moscow until further notice for, quote, operational reasons. Lufthansa says its flights to Asia are operating with long detours. Japanese and Korean carriers are among the few still able to use Russian airspace. But the shutdowns and flight cancellations are also set to affect cargo traffic, further exacerbating global supply chain woes. Two of the world's largest logistics companies, UPS and FedEx, said they were halting deliveries to Russia and Ukraine on Sunday. Meanwhile, German logistics company DHL said it had temporarily suspended shipments to and from Ukraine and was avoiding Ukrainian airspace for its global operations.
The world has stood in solidarity with Ukraine. Protests were held across the globe, including right outside United Nations headquarters in New York, where the General Assembly, in an extraordinary emergency session, is expected to vote on the Ukraine conflict later today. We're going to leave you with these visuals. I'm Simon Marks. Back tomorrow, same time, same place. Stay with WION. World is one.
Take Russia out! Take Russia out! Take Russia out!
I have been born in Ukraine. Yes, I was born in Ukraine. In Kyiv, in the capital. That's where my family is right now, hiding underground in the bunkers. My family right now is trying to hide from the bomb shells that are hitting their houses. Specifically, buildings are being hit by missiles.
We see our children stuck at the borders in Ukraine, Slovakia and Hungary, but we don't know what to do. We don't even know what they should do later on in regards to their studies, which they have already started. It is completely unclear. They need money and food. So we are hoping to find a solution for our children, as there are still others who are still stuck in Kharkiv and Kyiv.
This is right, Arab.